Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Auckland is a wonderful and positive, very positive city, and as Councillor Watson said, I agree with the aims of the Mayor, what he's trying to achieve through this targeted rate. However, I do believe it is fundamentally flawed, and that it has a very strong likelihood of an unnecessary legal challenge, which will cost ratepayers hundreds of thousands of dollars. I believe it's flawed basically for two reasons. One, it's not a bed tax, which is a percentage of the room rate which can be passed on to the guest bill. It is in fact unrelated, completely unrelated to the turnover of the business, and therefore the business's ability to actually pay it. And as Member Ten Nare pointed out, the impact of that is serious consequences of the staff of those businesses. Secondly, it's a property tax, it's not a user pay levy, and using a targeted rate in the way that this scheme has been designed is just a very blunt and, quite frankly, an inappropriate financial instrument for the council to be using. It goes without saying, if it was well designed, that the councillors wouldn't be quite as split as they are over this issue. So we know that the affected ratepayers of Auckland have indicated very strongly that they are likely to take council or legal proceedings against council over this. That is going to cost ratepayers a lot of money. You answered the question earlier when I asked for the correlation between the survey and polls. That council hasn't actually done a poll on this, and that polls are, and I quote, would provide much more accurate information. So I note that out of the 55,000 people who live in Rodney, 197 of those people have indicated that they're pro this targeted rate. That's 0.3% of the population. I'd say hardly a representative sample. At the Rodney Local Board meeting on the 18th of May, I was given the mandate to vote by that local board as I believed the community in Auckland would see as fairest. Because I'm in the position of councillor and can see the bigger picture. I also note there are a number of councillors who've indicated in their talks today that they are going to support this proposal while their own local boards do not support it. And I refer you to page 25, paragraph 64. So I've done my poll, and my poll came back showing that 95.6% of people think that it is more critical that politicians stick to their word. So in a nutshell, the Mayor and myself made very similar pledges about wanting to keep rates low and to have an average increase across Auckland of 2.5% or 2% respectively. But voting in this targeted rate would break both of those pledges and increase the Auckland's average rate increase to over 4%, double. So I will be voting against this item. And again, I'm just respectfully calling upon those politicians who voted for prudent rates or low rates to do the same. And there's 13 of you sitting around the table today. So I'm just asking you to honour your pledges and not to increase the average rate of Aucklanders by over 4%. Thank you.
I could actually ask a question just following Councillor Sayer's statements there. I'm a little bit nonplussed where 4% comes from. The way I read it, it's we're striking a 2.5% rate rise, and then we're raising what would be the equivalent of another % from a different area of ratepayers. Andrew, Matthew, could you just confirm that if we strike 2.5%, that is what residents will be paying? Could you just confirm that, please, whether that's true or not?
So that is right.
Thank you. Right, we have Councillor Cashmore.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. Very brief once again. So AT's work over the past 10 years combined with an increase in our economy post-GFC, has seen a substantial uplift in occupancy rates. The hotels themselves, they came and talked to us in the public consultation, alluded to such things. So AT's effectiveness in delivering that part of its budget is allocated to increasing visibility to Auckland, whether it's concerts, sporting fixtures, like they got negotiations for the second All Black test, whether it's a cruise as a destination port, where we are. They've all enabled more bed nights. AT can't claim 100% of that increase, and I don't think they even try to, but there is a percentage to it. And just this morning, we've seen that the International World Veterinary Association Conference for 2020 has signed up for Auckland. That has a value of $6.2 million to our economy in Auckland, and if 20% of that, which is what the figures tell us it is aligned to accommodation, that's $1.4 million. So that's just one of many conferences that's held. We've talked about the room rates, and we've had comment today about that this would be unaffordable. The accommodation sector have the ability, should they so desire, to pass these on to the people who are booking the rooms. And we've heard the comment that it's around $1 to $3 for motels approximately, and $2 to $6 for most hotels approximately. Last year, the rate increase average for Auckland accommodation providers was 16%. So is this fair and equitable? Not perfect, but it does get some of the money back from those who are benefiting, exacerbators and beneficiaries. Would a bed tax be a more flamboyant and better way to do it? Most certainly. But is that tool in our toolbox? No, it's not. And the last point I'd like to make is cronyism? No. Did I advocate for Franklin specifically to be removed from the sector? No. Neither did I advocate for Rodney or Papakura or Waitakere Rangers. What I've ever only advocated for is what is fair and reasonable. Did the hotel providers up in Wellsford gain from an Adele concert or a rugby match? No. It's likewise provided to the motel at Kaukau Bay or the motels up the Awhiri Peninsula. So that's about so many decisions that we make. It's about being pragmatic and using the common sense. It's not an ideal world in which we live, but in this instance, we are getting some of the money back that AT helps to deliver with extra room nights to the accommodation sector. Not all of it, just around 50%. And they're going to have a say through some sort of committee structure on AT how that money is spent to ensure that they get the best return on their investment. And I think that is prudent and fair.
Thank you, Councillor Cashmore. Now, I have three more speakers, and I thought I would actually only take one, and then we would go for lunch. So I have Councillor Wayne Walker, Councillor Fletcher, Councillor Mike Dean, Councillor Newman, you indicated?
Why don't we just finish this item?
Keep going.
Want to keep going?
Yeah.
Okay, no doubt.
Yeah.
Lunch could become dinner, but anyway. Councillor
focus
Walker,
our
Wayne
mind.
Walker.
Sure, I just hope that I can assist the appetite of the members. If you can bear with me, Mr. Chair, my interest is to actually address the decision-making process, and there are about 5 points there, and then there's the stand-back test. What I'd like to say first is, I think as far as I know, I've attended all the workshops, and on my part and my fellow councillor, Councillor Watson, we've met with hotel and motel operators in our ward and also across the region. And I'd emphasise across the region. And for us and those others that have done that, I think that's been incredibly productive, because you get the feedback from the industry that's directly affected. I've also had a print-off that I got, frankly, only today, of all the hotels and motels across the region. I'd been asking for that for a while. It doesn't have the ones that are probably going to drop off through remissions, but I only got that today. So dealing with these matters, one of our first tests is community outcomes. And if I assess the outcomes for this, for many people, and I'm talking about people, but also the hotels and the motels, it's not a good situation. Can they pass it on? They're not always going to be able to pass it on. I think that's pretty clear. And in terms of the outcomes for the people that work in this industry, and a lot of them are low paid, they're going to be job losses here. And those job losses will be felt, and they will be felt by the people in our communities that can ill afford that, because those people are already hurting from transport costs, hurting from accommodation costs, rental costs. People can't afford to live in Auckland. That's what it amounts to. And many of those people are the people that work in this industry. And if I look across there to the members of the IMSB, many of those people are Māori, also Pacific Islanders. You've just got to go into a motel or a hotel, and when the people come to clean the room and do all of those things, make your own assessment, it's pretty self-evident. There are other aspects around community outcomes that are unfair. Competition, that's an outcome. And I can tell you that there will be operators that will be going out of business as a consequence of this. And I know one of them. And that really hurts, because sometimes these people aren't even making enough money themselves right now, and it's a buoyant market. So what happens when things turn turkey and we go through the next cycle and we don't have so many people coming? So it's not good. As far as investment is concerned, and that's a critical outcome, we know at this point in time we have to have more beds in Auckland. We need more hotels and motels. And the operators and the people that build these hotels and motels have told us that the cost of building in Auckland is incredibly expensive. And the return that they get, especially if you look at that return over a period of time, is not good. In fact, I doubt if many of us would want to put our money into a hotel or a motel on the basis of the sort of returns that they get. It might be better right now, but it's not necessarily good long term. So I could go through a whole range of outcomes, and when I apply that test, the answers that I get back aren't good. When I look at the next test, which is around distribution of benefits, I think we've already heard that the distribution of benefits is pretty perverse. There are parts of the region, like Franklin, that may be benefiting, but the operators there aren't paying. They ain't paying for the V8s. We know that if we look at the distribution of benefits, and we're talking about trying to claw money here to fund ATID, that we're not picking up on the retailers, we're not picking up on the restaurants, we're not picking up on the bungee jumpers.
Getting close to 5 minutes.
And a whole bundle of others that benefit. So distribution of benefits, that test don't work. When you look at the period over which the benefits occur, there are similar problems, and I won't go into those. So that doesn't match up. If I look at cost causation, I've got real problems on the part of the ability of the industry to be able to pass the costs on, the property owners to pass the costs on to the people that are actually meant to be paying this, which are the people staying in the hotel. So cost causation's a problem.
Yep, you're up.
But in particular, when I look at practicality and transparency, this is incredibly messy. It's incredibly messy. And I won't go into that in any detail. It's going to be really tough for the operators to pass it on. There are going to be all sorts
well over 5 minutes,
fixes around
Councillor
permissions.
Walker, so we're going to move on to Councillor Fletcher.
Well, hang on.
I move an extension.
The last thing, sir, is the stand back test. So you stand back.
We'll pass anyway.
You stand back.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman. Point of order. A procedural motion has been put and seconded of an extension of time, and you need to put that to the.
I'm allowing the extension, but we'll go to a vote. Okay, right. We're going to move in a second, right?
2-minute extension.
Presumably a division as well.
I don't need long.
He's got to finish. It'd be quicker to let the member finish than to take a
We've got
vote.
one more point to make. Councillor Walker.
Come on.
Sure. So the last test, and it's probably the most important one, is the stand back test. You stand back and you look at this and you think to yourself, is this the best way to do it? And for me, the short answer is no. This should be done through the long-term plan because it is a significant issue. It's a structural issue that goes to our rates, to the way we set this issue. The other thing around this issue, particularly if we're going forward and we're looking about at other ways of raising alternative forms of revenue, we should be doing this much more collaboratively with the industry. They're giving us information, and frankly, we're not picking up on that adequately.
Thank you, Councillor Walker. Look, I allowed you,
Okay.
and it went on, and it was the standby, then you moved on to something else, but I cannot allow you
Oh,
to
I'll be
move on
voting
anymore.
against this.
Okay. Right, we have Councillor Fletcher.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Today is one of those days when I really wish this council had a Hansard equivalent, because going back to the end of last year, when the Mayor introduced his budget, and he introduced it as a visitor levy or a bed tax, I supported it wholeheartedly. I voted for it. And I assumed that after 30 years in Parliament, and knowing the sensitivities around these issues and the frustrations that local government have experienced in funding infrastructure, that he had actually manufactured or brokered a deal, and that we were finally going to see that cut through on the council being able to apply a visitor levy, because a visitor levy is what Auckland has long, we've needed it for such a long time. We are the gateway to New Zealand. The tourism infrastructure is really important. We've experienced the real difficulty in attracting hotel investors to Auckland. And so I was welcoming. In fact, I encouraged him, if the Hansard was available, you could read it. I encouraged him to actually take it further and look at the funding of our regional parks, because we would have had a fantastic opportunity, given the importance of our regional parks to tourism in Auckland, that this would be fantastic. You can imagine my disappointment when I did a bit of a deep dive down into it and discovered, no, it wasn't a visitor levy. It was actually a property tax, and it was going to be calculated on the basis of capital valuation. So in the very beginning, I was concerned about this, because I could see that if we were ever to get the traction with central government, we needed to execute these sorts of things particularly well. The greatest justification that I have heard is that somehow this might force government's hand. I think it's going to do the exact opposite, because they'll think, oh my God, we don't want to have anything to do with this, because it's just been such a fiasco. Midway through this, I actually asked the Mayor for the legal opinion, and I wanted a copy of it, because I thought, if we're going to do this, we do need to actually understand that we are doing the right thing. At that point, and he may have subsequently obtained legal opinions, but at that point he advised me that he had had legal soundings, that it was a legitimate tool that we could use to advance things. Now, all of this, I want to put it in context. This is the backdrop of the financial pressure. The council now, and has been for a very long time, is desperate for funds. But I think this is desperation carried too far. Sometimes a stitch in time can save nine. And I don't believe that we've actually been able to answer, and I don't want to repeat the debate that we've heard thus far, and I think Wayne Walker did a really good job of identifying the tests that he has put this proposal through. But it has been difficult. As a councillor, we are given very little support in terms of contestable policy advice. The mayoral office, which quite correctly, under the amalgamated model,
Councillor, just have to interrupt you there. I think we've been given heaps of contestable advice, and I think that is a slight on the staff to assert that there has been insufficient contestable advice. And I will say, as Chair of the Finance Committee, you know from my record in the previous Council, as Deputy Chair, I insisted more than anyone that we get contestability from the finance staff, and they have done an excellent job. So
Mr. Chairman, I'm willing to apologise. There is no intention by me to throw any slight on the staff. That is not my intention. But the reality, and it doesn't just apply to this proposal, of others, when you get into that complex mire of legal issues, it is very, very hard as a councillor, and I am not a lawyer, it is very hard often to get the advice that you want at the time on those really complex issues. So there is no disrespect by me intended to our staff. Please, can that be quite clear? But it has been difficult to get some of the information that I wanted. I've tried to make that point in terms of the impact vis-a-vis the cost benefits with AT, trying to do the deep dive into that kind of information. But I think that we do have a challenge. Tourism is our largest industry in New Zealand, and it is important that we are getting the right investment coming in. Our reputation as not just Auckland, but as a country is important if we are going to attract those investors, particularly the hotelier investors. And is this the right approach? Has it been evidence-based? I was of the view that we were going to try and make as many of our decisions on the basis of evidence as we could. But the issue around picking winners and losers in this situation, whether you could apply it to the points that Wayne was making on the distribution of benefits, whether it's restaurants, whether it's recreational tourism providers, whatever it might be, have we been able to answer those things? And I know the answer immediately forthcoming will be, oh, well, it's the only tool that we've got in the toolbox. So are we squandering that tool in terms of the outcome that we are possibly going to get? And I will come again to the issue of winners and losers in a regional sense, because I just am not persuaded, and it's not about just Franklin, it's about the whole raft of this fresh proposal. Is it fair? Is the test for me, is it fair? And I say not.
Councillor, I've allowed you to go to 6 minutes.
But you interrupted me through. I've got one more point.
I have allowed for that as well. Anyway, carry on.
Thank you very much. How gracious. If you wanted to do something like this, that you could have made sure that it would impact on the whole tourism sector, you could have introduced a targeted rate on the airport. And whilst you can't rate the runways, you can certainly rate the rest of the airport area. And I think there were other alternatives. We were not that desperate. To me, this has been clumsy, it's flawed, and I think the net result of it will be that government won't want to have a bar of it, and we will never get around to getting the visitor levy.
Thank you, Councillor. Right, so I have Councillor Mike Lee, Councillor Newman, Councillor Denise Lee, Councillor Simpson, and then Mayor Goff indicating he would wrap it up. So
5 o'clock.
we will keep it going.
No,
We have a 10-minute break then for
I think it's
something.
unfair on staff to.
I think we should have a break. I had to say we've got 6 people there, and I did have Councillor Walker wanted to take a break as well. So I'm going to have one more speaker, which is Councillor Lee.
Okay, I'm happy to break now, but if whatever.
Have a break. Yeah.
Let's break now then. Okay, we are coming back at 2:15. 2:15.